Most people think anger protects them. It doesn't. It blinds them, hardens them, and slowly teaches the people around them to feel less safe. I'm 90 years old, and after everything I've seen, I can tell you this is one of the most expensive mistakes a person can make. Most people think anger makes them dangerous. What it really does, most of the time, is make them careless. And careless is expensive. It costs marriages. It costs jobs. It costs trust. It costs sleep. It costs the kind of peace you don't know you've lost until the house is quiet and you're sitting alone with a cup of coffee gone cold, wondering why the people you love have started speaking to you a little more carefully than they used to. I'll tell you something I learned late. Too late, if I'm being honest. Anger is not usually the first feeling. It's the second one. The first one is hurt, or fear, or shame, or grief, or that old familiar feeling that you've been dismissed, overlooked, talked down to, used up, or taken for granted. But hurt is softer. Fear feels too naked. Grief asks too much of the heart. So anger steps in wearing big boots and a loud voice, and for a little while, it makes you feel stronger than you really are. That's why so many people trust it. They shouldn't. I've lived long enough to watch anger ruin things that took years to build. A family can sit around the same Thanksgiving table for 20 years, and one hot moment can change the air in that room for the next 10. A man can work 30 years at the same company, lose his temper in one meeting, and suddenly all anybody remembers is not his loyalty, not his work ethic, not the Saturdays he gave up, but the way he slammed his hand down and made the whole room go still. That's the trouble with anger. It speaks loudly. The consequences speak slowly. So let me give you 7 things I believe you should never do when you're angry. I'm not saying this as a saint. I'm saying it as a woman who has had to learn, in the most ordinary and painful American ways, what anger can do when you hand it the car keys. The first thing is this: never send the version of yourself that was written in your head at 2 a.m. You know exactly what I mean. That message, that email, that speech you've been polishing while loading the dishwasher, lying awake in bed, driving home from the doctor's office, standing in line at the grocery store with your jaw clenched. You've revised it 5 times already. You know where the sharp parts are. You know which sentence is going to make the other person feel small. And somewhere in you, that feels satisfying. That is the very reason not to send it. By the time a speech has been rehearsed in anger, it is rarely trying to solve anything. It is trying to land a blow. It wants an audience. It wants the moment after the words leave your mouth, when the other person's face changes and you think, yes, now you feel it too. But that kind of victory leaves a stain. Years ago, I knew a woman in Ohio whose daughter moved 3 states away after a terrible argument over money. The mother had helped with the car payment, then with rent, then with daycare, and by the end of it she wasn't really helping anymore. She was resentful. She had a whole speech ready. I know because she told me pieces of it afterward. Every sentence was clever. Every sentence was true in a narrow way. And every sentence was meant to wound. She said it all in one breath, right there in her own kitchen. Her daughter didn't yell back. She just picked up her purse, kissed the little boy on the head, and said, "I think we need some space." That space lasted almost 3 years. Now, Was the mother wrong about everything? No. That's what makes anger so tricky. It often wraps itself around some real grievance. But truth used like a hammer is still violence of a kind. The facts may be correct. The spirit can still be cruel. If a conversation needs to happen, let it happen when your goal is clarity, not punishment. Write the message if you need to. Then don't send it. Put the phone face down. Go rinse out your coffee mug. Fold a towel. Sit on the porch. Come back when the words sound like they belong to the best part of you, not the hottest one. The second thing is one I wish more people understood. Never make a lasting decision while your body is still in a storm. People love to say, "I was just being honest." Maybe. But honesty is not the same thing as wisdom. When you're angry, your whole body joins in. Your chest gets tight. Your breathing changes. Your heart starts beating like you've been called into a fight. And maybe 1,000 years ago, that served a purpose. Maybe that kind of fast fire helped a person survive. But in modern American life, it mostly shows up in the wrong places. In parking lots, in text messages, in HR offices, across the dinner table, in the pharmacy drive-thru, on the phone with Medicare after being on hold for 40 minutes, in the car after one ugly visit with a son who thinks he knows everything because he read something online. And in that state, people do foolish things. They quit jobs they still need. They cancel friendships that could have been repaired. They threaten divorce when what they really want is to be heard. They move money in a rush. They promise never to speak again. They tell themselves this is strength, when often it is just adrenaline with a good tailor on. I have a simple rule for this. Nothing permanent on the same day. Not the same evening. Not after midnight. Not while your hands are shaking. Not while you're still replaying the look on somebody's face. If it's a decision that changes your finances, your family, your living situation, your reputation, or your peace, sleep first. Then sleep again if you need to. I once knew a retired man in Pennsylvania who was ready to sell his paid-off house because of a fight with his son over who deserved it later. He was furious, said he'd sell the place, buy an RV, and let them all figure it out without him. It sounded bold at the time. It also sounded ridiculous to anybody who wasn't inside his anger. 3 days later, he admitted what he really wanted wasn't to sell the house. He wanted his son to feel the panic he was feeling. That's how anger talks. It says, do something dramatic so somebody understands. No. Do something steady so you can still live with yourself afterward. The third thing is harder and maybe the most important. Never use anger to cover a sadness you don't want to name. A lot of older people do this without realizing it. Maybe younger people do too, but by the time you get to the second half of life, you've had enough losses to know the pattern. Sometimes what looks like anger is heartbreak in work clothes. You're angry at your daughter for not calling, but beneath that is the grief of feeling less central in her life than you used to be. You're angry at your husband for forgetting something again, but beneath that may be fear about aging, about what's coming, about what the next 5 years might ask of both of you. You're angry at the neighbor, the church committee, the store clerk, the cable company, but really you're exhausted, lonely, embarrassed, or carrying a sorrow that never quite finished moving through you. Anger is active. Grief is helpless. That's why people choose anger. It feels like doing something. But uncried tears don't disappear. They just put on a harder face. After my husband died, there was a season when every little thing irritated me. The mail being late, the washing machine making that clunking sound, somebody laughing too loudly at a diner booth, people asking me, "How are you holding up?" as if there were a tidy answer to that. I thought I had become a difficult old woman, sharp around the edges, short-fused. What I was, if I tell the truth, was broken-hearted. And because I was raised in a time when people got on with things, I got on with things. Paid the bills, cleaned the kitchen, answered cards, took casseroles from kind church ladies and said thank you. But I didn't let myself sit still long enough to feel the full weight of what had happened. So the sorrow leaked out sideways as irritation. One morning, I was standing in the cereal aisle, looking at prices I thought were ridiculous, and I started crying over a box of Cheerios. Not because of the cereal, because it hit me all at once that I was still shopping as if there were two of us. That was the truth under the temper. If your anger feels bigger than the moment, ask what else is in the room with it. There may be mourning there. There may be fear there. There may be the ache of becoming older in a country that does not always know how to honor aging without also making it feel like a decline. If it's grief, anger won't carry it out of you. It will only carry it around. The fourth thing is one too many families learn the hard way. Never put your anger on display in front of people who will have to carry the sound of it. Children, of course, grandchildren too, but not just them. A daughter-in-law trying to keep the peace at Christmas. A grandson sitting in the next room pretending not to hear. A co-worker, a waitress, a church friend caught in the middle. Even the neighbors, if you live close enough that your front porch is practically their front porch. People remember what love looks like under pressure. That matters. I'm not saying real families never argue. Lord knows they do. Any long relationship worth having will have friction in it. But there's a difference between conflict and spectacle. There's a difference between tension and emotional debris. Years back, I visited a family where the parents had a way of having it out in front of everybody. They called it honesty. Their grown children called it normal because they had no choice. But one of those daughters told me later, in her 60s, that she still felt sick whenever voices got too sharp in a room. She said even now, if somebody clinks a glass down too hard at dinner, her body goes on alert. That's what people carry. Not always the exact words. Sometimes just the feeling. You may think, oh, they're old enough, or they were in bed, or it was only once. But homes are emotional classrooms. People learn there what disagreement sounds like, what respect sounds like, what contempt sounds like, what safety sounds like. If you need to work something out, work it out. But don't turn the room into a stage and call it authenticity. Take a walk, close the bedroom door, wait until the grandkids go home. Lower your voice, protect the atmosphere if you can. There are some sounds a person forgets, and some they build a life around. The fifth thing is one that looks respectable from the outside. Never use silence like a form of revenge. Now, I'm not talking about taking a breather. I believe in that. I believe in saying, I'm too upset to talk well right now. Give me a little while. That can be wise. That can save a marriage. That can save a friendship. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is stop the conversation before the worst parts of you come through. But that is not the same as going cold and making somebody pay by your absence. There are people who can turn a house into ice without raising their voice once. They don't yell, they don't curse, they just withhold themselves. No good morning, no eye contact, cabinet doors opening and closing, the television humming at night, fork against plate, quiet with a message in it. That kind of silence is not peace, it is pressure. And after enough years of it, the other person stops trying to reach you, not because they don't care, because they have learned that your silence has teeth. I've seen couples do this for decades. They think they're being civilized because nothing is thrown and nobody is screaming. Meanwhile, the distance between them grows like a crack in a driveway. Small at first, then one winter later, bigger, then bigger still, until one day the whole thing has split and no one remembers when it started. If you need space, say so plainly. I'm upset. I need an hour. I want to talk, but not like this. Let's sit down after dinner. Let's talk tomorrow when we're both calmer. That is space with dignity. Punishing people by disappearing emotionally only teaches them one thing. Your love goes missing when things get hard. And once someone starts bracing for that, intimacy doesn't stand much of a chance. The sixth thing is not talked about enough, especially in this country. Never let anger turn into a story that the world owes you. I know how American life can make that temptation feel reasonable. You work hard, you pay your mortgage, you raise children. You skip things you wanted because braces cost money, groceries cost money, the water heater breaks, the transmission goes, the insurance deductible jumps, the prescription costs more this month than last month. You do what people told you to do. Save some. Don't get behind. Be responsible. Keep going. And then life still comes for you. Your retirement account dips at the wrong time. Your spouse gets sick. Your son borrows money he just needs for a month. Your body gets older while your bills keep acting young. You need help carrying groceries up the steps, and somewhere deep inside that feels humiliating. Of course, there's anger in that, but there's a dangerous turn anger can take. It can become entitlement dressed up as righteousness. It can whisper, "After all I've done, I should not have to deal with this. Somebody ought to make this right. Somebody ought to pay. The universe owes me smoother roads than this." It doesn't. That's a hard sentence. I know it is. But there is freedom in it too. Because once you stop waiting for life to refund your suffering, you can finally get back to living the life you still have. A widow I knew in Arizona lost half her savings to a scam she was too ashamed to tell anyone about for months. By the time she told the truth, what hurt her most wasn't just the money. It was the insult of it, the humiliation, the rage. She kept saying, "After everything I've been through, this should not happen to me." And she was right in one sense. It shouldn't have happened, but it had. Healing began only when she stopped bargaining with reality and started asking the better questions. What now? Who can help me? What can still be protected? What pride do I need to lay down so I can move forward? Anger that says, "This is unfair," can be useful for a minute. Anger that says, "I am owed a life untouched by unfairness," will make you bitter, and bitterness is a hard roommate in old age. The last thing is the one I hope you remember tomorrow, not just today. Never confuse your anger with your character. This is the mistake that traps people longest. They start saying, "That's just how I am. I've always had a temper. Everybody in my family is like this. I'm Italian. I'm Irish. I'm from New York. I don't sugarcoat things." People know where they stand with me. Maybe, but a temper can become a costume people grow attached to because they don't know who they are without it. Some folks have worn anger so long it feels like honesty to them, or strength, or backbone, or proof they haven't gone soft. But being angry all the time does not make a person strong. Sometimes it just means they have built a whole identity around never feeling vulnerable. And vulnerability is where most of the truth lives. The angriest people I have known were not always the toughest. Many of them were frightened of being ignored, frightened of getting old, frightened of losing control, frightened of being dependent, frightened of not mattering anymore, frightened that if they softened for even a minute, the whole world would walk right over them. That fear can wear the face of anger for years. But anger is not a personality. It is a signal, sometimes an alarm, sometimes a cover, sometimes a shield, sometimes a flare that tells you something underneath needs attention. But it is not your name. It is not your soul. It is not the truest thing about you. You are not your worst reaction. You are not the heat that rises in you when somebody presses the bruise. You are the person who decides what to do next. That is where your dignity lives. So let me gather this up plain. When you're angry, don't send the polished message written by your hurt. Don't make a big decision while your nervous system is still on fire. Don't call it anger if what's underneath is grief. Don't spill it all over people who will carry the sound of it for years. Don't freeze somebody out and pretend that's maturity. Don't feed yourself the story that life owes you a painless path. And don't build your identity around being the person who burns hot. You don't have to be ashamed of anger. It is human. It comes to all of us. It will come again. Probably sooner than you think. Somebody will talk down to you. Somebody will disappoint you. Somebody you love will be careless with your heart. The bank will make a mistake. The pharmacy will lose the prescription. Your grown child will say something breathtakingly insensitive. The world will not stop giving you reasons. But the reason is not the same as the permission. That's what age taught me. Not how to avoid anger, how to refuse to let it drive. There's a kind of peace that comes to people who learn this. Not perfect peace, not saintly peace, just a steadier one. The kind that lets you sit on the front porch at dusk and not replay every hurt. The kind that lets you answer the phone without carrying yesterday into today. The kind that lets you keep your heart open without leaving your mind unguarded. That peace is worth more than winning an argument. It's worth more than the satisfaction of one sharp sentence. It's worth more than being right in a room where everybody leaves feeling smaller. By the time you get to this season of life, you start to understand that not every fire deserves your house. Some need a boundary, some need a conversation, some need a nap, a walk, a prayer, a good cry, a sandwich, a night of sleep, and the humility to revisit the whole thing in the morning. And some need to be laid down altogether. I'm at an age now where I think often about what I want to leave behind in people. Not furniture, not recipes, not even money, though money matters, and I'd never tell you it doesn't. I mean the feeling people have after being with me. Whether they feel steadier, safer, more at ease, more seen. Anger can take that from you if you let it. So today, if something gets under your skin, Slow yourself down before you speak. Put the phone down. Step outside if the weather allows. Look at the sky for 1 full minute. Let your body remember that not every wound needs an immediate witness. Then, when you can, call somebody you love just to hear a familiar voice. Not to argue, not to prove anything, just to remember what matters while there's still time. What all of this comes down to is something people usually learn later than they wanted to. Anger is not the danger by itself. We all get angry. If you live long enough, if you love long enough, if you trust people long enough, you will be hurt, disappointed, overlooked, insulted, and let down. That part is not avoidable. What matters is not whether anger comes. What matters is what kind of home you give it once it arrives. If you let it settle too deeply, it starts changing the way you speak, the way you decide, the way you remember things, even the way people feel around you. And that is the part people miss. They think anger is just a moment. But very often, it becomes an atmosphere. It gets into the marriage, into the family, into the phone call you don't make, into the apology you delay, into the silence at the dinner table, into the part of your heart that used to be softer. And at this age, I'll tell you plain, peace is too precious to keep handing over to every hurt feeling that passes through. The deeper lesson here is not that you should become passive, quiet, or afraid to speak. It is that strength is not proven by how fast you react. Real strength shows up in what you refuse to let your pain turn you into. It takes strength to pause. It takes strength to wait a day before answering. It takes strength to admit that what you feel might be grief, not rage. It takes strength to say, I need a little time, instead of saying the one thing that can never be unsaid. And that lesson matters right now in ordinary life, not just in some big dramatic moment. It matters when your grown child says something careless. It matters when the bills are high and your nerves are thin. It matters when someone at work disrespects you. It matters when you feel invisible, lonely, or tired of carrying more than your share. In those moments, you do not need to be perfect, but you do need to be careful. Put the phone down. Go outside for a minute. Make a cup of coffee. Sit with the feeling long enough to know what it really is before you hand it your voice. Because the goal in the end is not to win more fights. It is to protect what still matters while you still have it. Before I go, I'd love to hear from you. Which of these 7 mistakes do you think is the most dangerous when a person is angry? If you feel comfortable, leave your answer down in the comments so others can read different perspectives too. And if this kind of quiet, honest conversation means something to you, please subscribe to the channel. It truly helps, and it gives me the encouragement to keep sharing more of these life lessons with you.